The blood on his hands wasn't his own. And that's how Eleanor first saw him. Eleanor Hartwell had seen plenty of drifters pass through Redemption Flats, but none arrived like this one. He came with the dust storm, barely standing, his horse gone, his shirt torn open across the ribs. She was drawing water from the well behind her father's house when she heard the stumbling footsteps. Most women would have screamed. Eleanor reached for the rifle leaning against the fence post. He collapsed 3 feet from her boots, face down in the dirt. Still breathing, she should have run inside. Should have called for her father, Sheriff Thomas Hartwell, the man who'd hanged 7 outlaws in the past 2 years alone. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way his fingers were still clutching at the earth, like he was trying to hold on to life itself. Maybe it was the desperation she recognized. The same desperation she felt every time her father introduced her to another suitable rancher's son, another future she didn't want. She dragged him into the barn. He was heavier than he looked, all lean muscle and sun-darkened skin. His face was young, maybe 25, with sharp features and black hair that fell past his shoulders. There were scars on his back, old ones, the kind that told stories Eleanor wasn't sure she wanted to know. She cleaned the fresh wound on his side, a bullet graze, still weeping, and wrapped it with strips torn from her spare petticoat. He woke 3 hours later with her father's pistol pressed against his temple. Eleanor had positioned herself between them, but her hand never wavered. His eyes opened slow, dark eyes, almost black, that took in everything in a single sweep. The gun, the woman, the danger. "Who are you?" she asked. And before he could answer, she added the question that mattered more. "What are you running from?" He told her his name was Jesse Crowfeather. Said he'd been working cattle drives down in Texas, got caught in a dispute over wages, and the foreman's brother came after him with a knife. Self-defense, he claimed. But the law in Grayson County didn't see it that way. So he ran, been running for 3 weeks. Hadn't eaten in 4 days. Eleanor studied his face while he spoke. He didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't offer her the kind of pleading eyes men used when they wanted mercy. He just told the truth, or what sounded like truth, and waited for her decision. She made it fast. "You can stay in the barn," she said. 3 days. After that, you're gone. And if my father catches you, I never saw you. Do we understand each other?" Jesse nodded once. "We do." That was the beginning. That moment when Eleanor Hartwell chose compassion over caution, kindness over duty. She didn't know then that her choice would cost her everything, and give her everything she'd never known she needed. For 3 days, she brought him food before dawn and after dark. Bread, dried beef, apples from the root cellar. She never stayed long, never asked questions. But on the 3rd night, she found him standing, testing his weight on his injured side. The wound was healing clean. He'd be able to ride soon. She felt something twist inside her chest, something she refused to name. "You should go tomorrow," she said. "My father's getting suspicious. He keeps asking why I've been spending so much time in the barn." Jesse turned to face her fully for the first time. In the lantern light, she could see the exhaustion still carved into his features, but also something else, gratitude. And beneath that, something deeper, something that made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I owe you my life," he said quietly. "That's not a debt I take lightly." Eleanor shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone would do." "No," Jesse stepped closer. "You did what you would do. There's a difference." The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Eleanor knew she should leave, should turn around and walk back to the house and forget this man existed. But her feet wouldn't move. And when Jesse reached out, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't. "Who are you, really?" she whispered. "Because I don't believe that story about Texas. I don't believe any of it." Jesse's hand fell away. For a long moment he said nothing. "Then I'm someone who doesn't belong anywhere. Someone the world decided wasn't worth keeping. And I'm someone who's going to get you killed if you keep helping me." Eleanor felt the truth of those words like a fist to the stomach. But instead of backing away, she stood taller. "Then you'd better leave before dawn," she said, "because I'm not ready to die yet." and neither are you." She left him standing in the lantern light, walked back through the dark yard to her father's house, and climbed into bed with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She didn't sleep, and when dawn came, she expected to find the barn empty. But Jesse Crown was still there, still waiting, and that changed everything. Redemption Flats had a way of knowing things before they were spoken. Secrets lasted about as long as morning dew. Within a week the whispers started. Eleanor could feel them following her through the general store, could see the sidelong glances from the church women on Sunday. Mrs. Blackwell, the banker's wife, made a point of mentioning how dangerous it was for a young woman to spend so much time alone in the barn. Mr. Garrett, who owned the saloon, told her father straight out that he'd seen lantern light out there past midnight 3 nights running. Sheriff Hartwell confronted Eleanor over breakfast on a Tuesday morning. His coffee sat untouched, gone cold, while he stared at his daughter with the same expression he used on criminals. "What are you hiding, Eleanor? And don't lie to me. I've known you since you drew your first breath." She met his eyes without flinching. "I'm not hiding anything. I've been organizing the tack room. It's a mess at midnight. When else would I have time? You keep me busy enough during the day." Her father's jaw tightened. He didn't believe her. But he also didn't push. Not yet. Thomas Hartwell was a patient man when it came to extracting truth. He'd learned long ago that silence was more effective than interrogation. Eleanor knew her time was running out. She found Jesse that evening and told him he had to leave, tonight, now, but he refused. "There's something you need to know first," he said, "about who I really am. I don't care who you are." "Yes, you do." Jesse's voice was firm but not harsh. "You care because you're not stupid, Eleanor. You've known from the beginning that something wasn't right. So I'm going to tell you the truth, and then you're going to decide whether you still want to help me. Fair." Eleanor's throat felt tight. "Fair." Jesse sat down on a hay bale, and Eleanor remained standing, her arms crossed over her chest like armor. He took a breath that seemed to cost him something. "My name isn't Jesse Crown. It's Jesse Crowfeather. My mother was Comanche. My father was a settler who took her during a raid on her village. I was born in a camp that didn't want me. Half-breed. Not white enough for the towns, not Indian enough for the tribes. My mother died when I was 8. Fever. After that, I was passed around between missions and orphanages and ranches that wanted cheap labor." Eleanor felt something crack open inside her chest. "Keep going," she said quietly. "When I was 17, I ran away. Ended up with a group of men who didn't care what blood ran in my veins, as long as I could shoot straight and ride hard. We robbed stages, payroll shipments, banks. I'm not proud of it, but I won't lie about it either. That's who I was. That's what I did to survive." Jesse looked up at her then, and Eleanor saw the weight of those years in his eyes. "But last year, something changed. We hit a bank in a town called Bitter Creek. The sheriff came out shooting, and one of my partners, he panicked. Shot a woman who was just standing on the boardwalk. Killed her instantly. She had a baby in her arms. The baby survived, but his voice broke. Eleanor waited. I couldn't do it anymore. I told them I was done. They didn't take it well, so I ran again. But this time they're not just the law chasing me. It's the men I rode with. They think I might talk, might trade information for leniency. And they're right, I would, because that woman didn't deserve to die. And I don't deserve to keep running from what I've done." Silence filled the barn. Outside, crickets sang their endless song. Eleanor's mind raced through everything he'd just told her, every piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The scars, the way he moved like he expected violence, the haunted look that never quite left his face. "Why did you tell me?" she finally asked. "Because you deserve to know what kind of man you've been saving." Jesse stood up slowly. "And because I can't keep lying to you, not after everything you've risked." Eleanor walked to the barn door and looked out at the darkening sky. Behind her, she could hear Jesse gathering his things, preparing to leave. She knew what she should do. She should let him go. Should thank God he was leaving before her father found out. Should go back to her safe, predictable life and forget this ever happened. Instead, she turned around and said, You're not going anywhere." Jesse froze. "Eleanor, you don't understand. No, you don't understand." She walked back toward him, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "You think telling me the truth would make me turn you away? But all it did was show me that you're more than what the world tried to make you. You're someone who finally said enough, someone who chose conscience over survival. That takes more courage than anything. I'm a wanted man. There's a bounty on my head. If your father finds out, then we'll deal with it when it happens. But I'm not sending you out there alone. Not tonight. Not ever." The words hung between them like a promise neither of them had planned to make. Jesse stared at her with something close to disbelief. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care what happens to me?" Eleanor had asked herself the same question 100 times. She'd never found an adequate answer. So she told him the only truth she knew, because everyone deserves one person who believes they're worth saving. "And you're worth saving, Jesse, whether you believe it or not." Something shifted in his expression. The hardness that he wore like armor cracked just enough for her to see the man underneath. The man who'd been running so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be still, to be safe, to be wanted. Not by the law, but by someone who saw him as human. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. And in that moment, Eleanor Hartwell crossed a line she could never uncross. She chose this man over her father's law, over her town's judgment, over everything she'd been taught was right and proper and safe. She chose him, and that choice would soon cost her everything. Love and secrets have one thing in common. Neither can stay buried forever. 2 weeks passed like stolen moments wrapped in danger. Eleanor continued her daily routines, playing the role of dutiful daughter, while her heart belonged to a man hiding in the shadows of her father's barn. She brought Jesse books from her room, newspapers from town, anything to keep his mind occupied during the endless hours of waiting. They talked in whispers about everything and nothing. He told her about the desert, about riding through canyons so beautiful they made your chest ache. She told him about her mother, who died bringing her into the world, and how she'd spent her whole life trying to be enough for a father who loved her, but didn't know what to do with her. They never touched beyond the accidental brush of fingers, never kissed, never even spoke the word love aloud. But it was there, growing between them like something wild and inevitable. Then came the day everything changed. A rider arrived in Redemption Flats on a horse so lathered it collapsed in front of the sheriff's office. The man himself barely looked better, gaunt, trail-worn, with the desperate look of someone chasing ghosts. He had a satchel full of wanted posters and a story about a Comanche half-breed named Jesse Crowfeather who'd ridden with the Grayson gang. There was a reward, $500. Dead or alive, Eleanor was at the general store when she heard. Mrs. Blackwell couldn't wait to spread the news. Said the bounty hunter claimed Crowfeather was dangerous, had killed 2 lawmen in cold blood, and was last seen heading north toward Redemption Flats. Said he had information the fugitive might be hiding in someone's barn, might have fooled some soft-hearted woman into protecting him. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. She bought her supplies with shaking hands, walked out into the street with her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She needed to get to Jesse, needed to warn him, needed to— "Eleanor!" Her father's voice stopped her cold. He was standing in front of the sheriff's office, the bounty hunter beside him, both of them watching her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Her father's was troubled. The bounty hunter's was knowing. "Come inside," her father said. "We need to talk." She had no choice. She followed them into the office, felt the door close behind her like a cell door slamming shut. The bounty hunter introduced himself as Silas Kane. He had cold eyes and colder manners. "Sheriff, I don't mean to cause trouble," Kane said, "but I've been tracking Crowfeather for 6 weeks. He's dangerous, and I've got reason to believe he's close." "Real close." Eleanor's father looked at her. His expression said he already knew, already suspected, maybe had suspected from the beginning. "Eleanor, if you know something about this man, you need to tell me now." She could have lied. Should have lied. But Eleanor had never been good at deception, and her father had always been too good at reading her. So she lifted her chin and met his eyes and said, "He's not dangerous. Not anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. "You know where he is?" Her father's voice was barely above a whisper. "Eleanor, what have you done?" "I helped someone who needed help. That's what I've done. He's a criminal. He's a person." Eleanor's voice rose to match her father's, "and he's spent his whole life being treated like he's less than human because of who his mother was, because he didn't have a choice in how he was born. You taught me to see people as individuals, Pa, to judge them by their character, not their circumstances. Well, I judged Jesse Crowfeather's character, and I found him worthy of mercy." Kane stepped forward. "I don't know what lies this man told you, but he's killed 3 people. 3, and he'll kill more if we don't stop him." "That's not true." "It is true." Kane pulled a document from his satchel, slapped it on the sheriff's desk. "There's the warrant. There's the list of charges: murder, armed robbery, assault. This man is dangerous, and you've been harboring a fugitive. In some territories, that's a hanging offense." Eleanor felt the room tilting. Her father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. The betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than any knife. "Where is he, Eleanor?" Her father's voice was hollow now. "Where is Jesse Crowfeather? She could have protected him. Could have lied about the barn, said she'd sent him away days ago, given him time to run. But she also knew her father, knew that if she lied now, he'd tear apart every building in town until he found Jesse. At least this way, she could be there. Could make sure Kane didn't shoot first and ask questions never." "The barn," she whispered. "He's in our barn." Her father's face went gray. He stood up slowly, reached for his gun belt, strapped it on with hands that shook just slightly. Then he looked at Kane. "You wait here. This is my jurisdiction, my property, and my daughter's mistake. I'll handle it." "I'm coming with you," Eleanor said. "No, I'm coming with you!" Eleanor's voice left no room for argument. "You don't trust me anymore, fine. But I'm not letting you do this alone. And I'm not letting him die because of me." Her father studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "But you stay behind me." "Understood." They walked across the yard like mourners in a funeral procession. Eleanor could see the curtains twitching in neighboring windows, could feel the whole town watching. By tomorrow, everyone would know. The sheriff's daughter, caught protecting a criminal. A Comanche criminal. The scandal would bury her. She didn't care. All she cared about was the man in the barn and the impossible hope that somehow, this could end without bloodshed. Her father opened the barn door with his gun drawn. "Eleanor, stay back." But she didn't stay back. She pushed past him, stepped into the dim interior, and found Jesse standing in the center of the barn with his hands already raised. He wasn't armed, wasn't trying to run. He just stood there, calm and resigned, like he'd been expecting this moment all along. His eyes found Eleanor's, and in them she saw no accusation, no anger, just a quiet sadness that broke something inside her. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." Jesse's voice was soft. "You gave me 2 weeks of something I've never had before, something I didn't think I deserved. That's more than anyone else ever gave me." Sheriff Hartwell stepped forward with the iron chains. "Jesse Crowfeather, you're under arrest, and you'd better pray that I don't let Silas Kane have you before the trial." Jesse didn't resist. He let the chains go on without a word, without a fight. And as they led him away, Eleanor felt her heart shatter into pieces small enough to slip through the cracks in the floorboards. She'd tried to save him, and in doing so she'd sealed his fate. A trial in Redemption Flats wasn't about justice. It was about control. They locked Jesse in the town jail, a stone building with bars so thick a man would need dynamite to break through. Eleanor wasn't allowed to see him. Her father forbade it, and for the first time in her life, she saw fear in Thomas Hartwell's eyes. Not fear of Jesse, fear of what the town would do if they thought the sheriff had gone soft, because Redemption Flats was changing. The arrival of Silas Kane and his wanted posters had stirred something ugly in the decent, God-fearing people Eleanor had known all her life. Suddenly, every man with a grievance was talking about frontier justice, about how the law was too slow, too soft, too willing to let criminals hide behind technicalities. And Jesse Crowfeather, half-Comanche, half-white belonging nowhere, became the perfect target for all that festering resentment. The trial was set for 3 days hence. Eleanor spent those days in a fog of desperation. She visited every influential person in town, begging them to remember mercy, to remember that even accused criminals deserved a fair hearing. But everywhere she went, doors closed in her face. Mrs. Blackwell told her she'd been fooled by a smooth-talking savage. Mr. Garrett said she was lucky the town didn't run her out alongside the prisoner. Even the preacher, gentle, kind Reverend Morrison, told her that some sins were too great for human forgiveness. Only one person offered her any comfort. Doc Patterson, the town physician, stopped her on the street 2 days before the trial. He was an old man, bent with age but sharp as a tack. "I knew your mother," he said quietly. "She would have done exactly what you did. Don't let them make you ashamed of your compassion, Eleanor. It's the only thing keeping this town from turning into something monstrous, but compassion wouldn't save Jesse." The night before the trial, Eleanor climbed out her bedroom window and made her way to the jail. Her father was asleep, exhausted from the weight of his divided loyalties. The deputy on duty was young Tommy Farris, a boy Eleanor had known since he was 10 years old. She brought him fresh cornbread and coffee, talked to him about his sweetheart, made him laugh. And when he got up to use the outhouse, she slipped the cell keys from his belt. She found Jesse sitting on the stone bench in his cell, staring at nothing. He looked up when she approached, and something painful crossed his face. "Eleanor, you shouldn't be here." "Where else would I be? Safe, far away from me." He stood up slowly, came to the bars. "This town wants blood, Eleanor, and they're going to get it. The only question is whether they wait for the hanging or do it themselves." Eleanor wrapped her hands around the bars, her fingers inches from his. "We're leaving. Tonight I have the keys. We can take your horse and be miles away before anyone notices." "No." The word was firm, final. Eleanor stared at him in disbelief. "What do you mean, no?" "Jesse, they're going to kill you. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm not running anymore." Jesse's voice was quiet but steady. "I've been running my whole life, Eleanor. Running from who I am, from what I've done, from every person who looked at me and saw something less. I'm done running. If I'm guilty, I'll face the punishment. And if I'm not, then maybe, just maybe, this town will remember what justice actually means." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "You're asking them to be better than they are. They won't give you a fair trial. They've already decided. Then that's on them, not on me. And not on you." Jesse reached through the bars and caught her tears with his thumb. "Eleanor, listen to me. You've given me something I never thought I'd have. You've given me proof that I'm worth something to someone. That's enough. That's more than enough. It's not enough for me." Eleanor's voice broke. "I can't lose you. Not like this. You're not losing me. I'm right here. And whatever happens tomorrow, I'll carry you with me, always." He kissed her then. Through the bars, awkward and desperate and perfect, Eleanor tasted salt. His tears or hers she didn't know, didn't care. She only knew that this moment was all they had, and it would never be enough. When she finally pulled away, Jesse pressed something into her hand. A small carved bird, made from a piece of wood, no bigger than her thumb. He must have made it during his days in the barn. "I'm not much of an artist," he said with a sad smile. "But I wanted you to have something to remember me by." Eleanor closed her fist around it. "I don't need this to remember you, I know, but take it anyway." She stayed with him until she heard footsteps approaching. Tommy returning from the outhouse. She kissed Jesse once more, quick and fierce, then slipped away into the darkness. Behind her, she heard the jangle of keys as Tommy discovered they were missing. By the time he raised the alarm, she was already back in her bedroom. The carved bird clutched against her heart. The trial began at noon the next day. The courtroom, really just the saloon with the tables pushed back, was packed to bursting. Every citizen of Redemption Flats wanted to see justice served, or what they called justice. Eleanor sat in the front row, her spine straight, her eyes fixed on Jesse as they brought him in. He was clean-shaven, wearing clothes her father had given him. He looked young suddenly, vulnerable, human. The judge was a circuit rider, a stern man named Holbrook who'd sentenced more than his share of criminals. But he was fair. At least, that's what Eleanor told herself. That's what she had to believe. Silas Kane testified first, laid out Jesse's crimes in precise detail. The robberies, the violence, the dead lawmen. He produced witnesses, other members of the Grayson gang who'd turned on Jesse to save themselves. They painted a picture of a ruthless killer who'd murdered in cold blood. Jesse didn't defend himself, didn't speak, just sat there accepting every accusation like penance. Then it was the defense's turn. But Jesse had no lawyer, had no one willing to speak on his behalf. The courtroom waited in tense silence, and Eleanor Hartwell stood up. Her father tried to stop her. Half the room erupted in protest. But Judge Holbrook banged his gavel and said, "The woman has a right to speak. Let her speak." Eleanor walked to the front of the room, her hands shaking but her voice clear. "I'm not a lawyer," she began. "I don't know the law like these men do. But I know people, and I know Jesse Crowfeather." She told them everything. About how he'd come to her injured and desperate. About how he'd been honest with her, even when the truth could have destroyed him. About how he'd chosen to stop running, to face justice, because he believed it was the right thing to do. She told them about the woman in Bitter Creek, about how witnessing that death had changed him. It had made him realize he couldn't be part of that life anymore. And then she said the words that silenced the room. "If we condemn him without mercy, without looking at who he became instead of who he was, then we're no better than the men he rode with. We're just another kind of gang, and our rope is just another kind of violence." The silence that followed was absolute. Judge Holbrook looked at Jesse. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" "Mr. Crowfeather." Jesse stood slowly. His eyes swept the room, landing on face after face, before finally settling on Eleanor. "I'm guilty," he said, "of robbery, of running, of violence. I don't dispute the charges. I only ask that you remember I'm not just my crimes. I'm also the man who's trying to do better. And I'm asking for the chance to prove that redemption is possible, even for someone like me." The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman read the verdict, guilty on all counts, but the sentence. The sentence was 20 years hard labor. Not hanging, life. Eleanor felt her knees buckle. Her father caught her before she fell. In the chaos of the courtroom, as people shouted their approval or anger, she met Jesse's eyes across the room. He smiled at her, actually smiled, like 20 years in chains was a gift, and maybe it was, because it meant he was alive. And where there was life, there was hope. Hope is a fragile thing, and Redemption Flats had no patience for fragile things. The sentencing should have been the end of it. Jesse was to be transported to the territorial prison in Fort Madison, 200 miles east. The judge ordered it done quickly and quietly to avoid trouble. But trouble had already arrived. That night, a mob formed outside the jail. Eleanor heard them from her bedroom, the roar of angry voices, the thunder of boots on wooden boards. She ran to the window and saw torches, dozens of them, bobbing like fireflies in the dark. Men she'd known her whole life, transformed into something unrecognizable by rage and righteous fury. They were chanting, "Half-breed, killer, savage." Eleanor flew down the stairs, burst out the front door to find her father already in the street, his badge catching the torchlight. Thomas Hartwell stood between the mob and the jail like a wall made of flesh and bone. "Gentlemen, go home. The law has spoken. The trial is over." But Silas Kane was at the front of the crowd, and his voice carried over the others. "The law gave him mercy he doesn't deserve. That murdering half-breed should hang, we all know it, and we're here to finish what the judge was too cowardly to do." "My father is no coward," Eleanor's voice cut through the noise. She stepped up beside Sheriff Hartwell, her fear buried beneath layers of fury. "And neither am I. If you want to lynch an innocent man, you'll have to go through us first." "Innocent." Kane spat the word like poison. "He confessed. He admitted to every crime, and he's serving his sentence. 20 years. That's what the jury decided. That's what the people decided. Or do you think your bloodlust matters more than the law you claim to uphold? For a moment, the mob hesitated. Doubt flickered across faces. But then someone shouted from the back, "She's been sleeping with him, the sheriff's daughter and a Comanche savage. She's probably carrying his bastard child right now." The accusation hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "Lies," she said, but her voice lacked conviction because the accusation was so vile, so beyond anything she'd prepared for. And in that moment of weakness, the mob surged forward. Thomas Hartwell drew his gun. "First man who takes another step gets a bullet." The crowd stopped. Kane's hand drifted toward his own weapon. "Sheriff, you're outnumbered 20-1. You really want to die for a half-breed criminal? I'm willing to die for the law." Hartwell's voice didn't waver. "And for my daughter's honor, which you just besmirched with lies. So yes, Mr. Kane, I'm willing. Are you?" The standoff stretched like wire pulled taut. Eleanor could barely breathe. Her father's gun was steady, but she could see the strain in his shoulders, could feel the weight of impossible odds pressing down on both of them. Then another voice joined them. Doc Patterson stepped out of the shadows, carrying his medical bag and a rifle. "I stand with the sheriff." And then another, Tommy Farris, the young deputy, looking terrified but determined. "And I stand with him too." One by one, others emerged from the darkness. Not many, not even a dozen, but enough to shift the balance. Enough to make the mob reconsider the cost of their violence. Silas Kane's face twisted with frustration. He looked at the crowd, at the sheriff, at the handful of people who'd chosen law over lynch mob. Then he spat in the dirt and said, "This isn't over. That half-breed's going to hang one way or another. And when he does, all of you will have blood on your hands for defending him." The mob dispersed slowly, reluctantly, like wolves circling prey before finally slinking back into the forest. Eleanor didn't move until the last torch had disappeared. Then her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the middle of the street. Her father holstered his gun and sat beside her. They didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. Exhaustion, fear, relief, and a kind of terrible understanding that nothing would ever be the same. "Are you all right?" her father finally asked. "No." Eleanor's voice was hollow. "No, I'm not." Thomas Hartwell put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Neither am I." Inside the jail, Jesse had heard everything. When Eleanor came to see him, an hour later she found him standing at the window, his hands wrapped around the bars. "You shouldn't have done that," he said without turning. "You should have let them take me. Now they'll come for you too. Then we'll face them together. Eleanor." Jesse finally looked at her. His face was ravaged by guilt and grief. "You can't keep doing this. You can't keep sacrificing everything for me. I'm not worth it." "Don't." Eleanor's voice was sharp. "Don't you dare tell me what you're worth. I'll decide that for myself. Your reputation is destroyed. Your father almost died tonight. The whole town thinks you're... They think we..." Jesse couldn't finish the sentence. "I don't care what they think. You should care." Jesse crossed to the bars, pressed his face against the cold iron. "Eleanor, I need you to understand something. I've lived my whole life being hated for things I couldn't control. And I survived because I stopped caring what anyone thought. But you have a life here, a future, people who love you. Don't throw that away for someone like me." Eleanor reached through the bars and grabbed his shirt, pulled him as close as the iron would allow. "Listen to me very carefully, Jesse Crowfeather. I am not throwing anything away. I am choosing. I am choosing you. I am choosing to believe that love matters more than reputation, that character matters more than blood, and that the opinion of a mob matters nothing compared to what I know in my heart." Her voice broke. "You asked me once why I was doing this, why I cared, and I didn't have an answer then. But I have one now. I'm doing this because I love you, because when I look at you, I don't see a criminal or a half-breed or any of the ugly things they call you. I see a man who's been broken and rebuilt himself into something better. I see courage and honesty and a heart that's still trying to be good despite everything the world did to destroy it." Tears streamed down Jesse's face. "I love you too," he whispered. "God help me, I love you too." They stood like that for a long time, separated by iron but connected by something stronger than any chains. And Eleanor made a decision in that moment, a decision that would define the rest of her life. If they wouldn't let Jesse live free, then she would find a way to set him free herself. The transport was scheduled for dawn. Eleanor had 3 hours to prepare. Some choices don't feel like choices at all. They feel like the only path forward when every other road has burned away. Eleanor moved through the darkness like a ghost. She left a note for her father on his desk, not an explanation, because there was no way to explain this that would make sense to him. Just an apology. Just 3 words. "I'm sorry, Pa." She'd packed light. A canteen, hardtack and dried meat, her mother's silver locket, and the deed to her grandmother's homestead in Colorado, a place so remote that even God seemed to have forgotten it existed. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a chance. The jail was quiet. Tommy Farris had the night watch again, but Eleanor had slipped laudanum into his coffee 2 hours earlier. He was sleeping soundly at his desk, his keys hanging from his belt like temptation made manifest. She took them without hesitation. Jesse was awake when she opened his cell. He'd been pacing, she could tell, the restless energy of a man who knew dawn was coming and couldn't decide whether to welcome it or fear it. He turned when he heard the door creak and his eyes went wide. "Eleanor, what are you—" "We're leaving." Her voice was steady. "We have maybe 3 hours before they notice you're gone. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. There are 2 horses waiting behind the church. I have supplies, I have money, and I have a place we can go where no one will find us." Jesse didn't move. He just stared at her like she'd sprouted wings. "You're asking me to run again. I'm asking you to live." Eleanor stepped into the cell. "Jesse, they're not going to let you reach Fort Madison. Silas Kane has been gathering men all evening. I overheard them talking in the saloon. They're planning to ambush the transport wagon 5 miles outside of town. They're going to kill you and claim you tried to escape." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jesse's jaw tightened. "How do you know this?" "Because I'm not stupid. And because I've spent my whole life in this town, and I know how to listen when men think women aren't paying attention." Eleanor grabbed his hand. "Please, Jesse, please don't make me watch you die because you're too proud to run. It's not about pride." "Then what is it about?" Eleanor's voice rose desperate now. "Is it about justice? Because there is no justice waiting for you at dawn. Is it about proving something to these people? Because they've already decided what you are, and nothing you do will change their minds. Or is it about punishing yourself? About deciding you deserve to die because of the man you used to be?" Jesse flinched, like she'd struck him. "Maybe it's all 3, he said quietly. "Well, I've decided you deserve to live." Eleanor pulled him toward the door. "And I've spent 23 years being the good daughter, the obedient woman, the person everyone expected me to be. I'm done with that. I'm choosing you, Jesse. I'm choosing us. And if that makes me a criminal too, then so be it." Something broke in Jesse's expression, the last wall crumbling under the weight of everything he'd been holding back. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and full of the kind of hunger that comes from years of being denied every soft thing in life. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "If we do this," he said, "there's no going back. Your father will never forgive you. This town will hunt you like they hunt me. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything that matters if I lose you." Eleanor wiped her eyes. "Now come on. We're wasting time." They moved through the town like shadows, keeping to the alleys and back paths Eleanor had known since childhood. The horses were where she'd left them, her father's best mare and a gelding she'd borrowed from Doc Patterson's stable. She'd left money to cover the cost, along with another note of apology. As they rode out of Redemption Flats, Eleanor looked back once. The town was dark, except for a few scattered lights. Somewhere in one of those buildings, her father was sleeping, unaware that his daughter had just chosen exile over obedience, unaware that he'd wake to find her gone, and his prisoner escaped, and his life shattered by the two people he'd loved most. Guilt twisted in Eleanor's stomach like a knife, but she didn't turn back. They rode hard for 3 hours, heading west toward the mountains. The sky was just beginning to lighten when Jesse finally slowed his horse. "Eleanor, we need to talk about what happens next." "We keep riding. We find my grandmother's homestead. We start over. And what about your father? What about the life you're leaving behind?" Eleanor pulled her horse to a stop. The pre-dawn light painted everything in shades of grey and purple. In the distance, she could see the outline of mountains rising like ancient guardians. "What life?" she said softly. "The one where I marry some rancher I don't love and spend 50 years wondering what might have been. The one where I watch you hang and carry that guilt until the day I die." "That's not a life, Jesse. That's just existing." Jesse rode closer until their horses were side by side. "You're going to regret this," he said. "Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but someday you're going to wake up and realize what you gave up for me. And when that day comes, then I'll deal with it." Eleanor reached across the space between them and took his hand. "But I'd rather have a lifetime of regrets with you than a lifetime of safety without you. That's my choice, and I'm making it with clear eyes and a full heart." The sun broke over the horizon then, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The kind of sky that poets wrote about. The kind that made you believe in new beginnings and second chances, and the possibility that sometimes, love was enough to outweigh all the reasons it shouldn't be. Jesse looked at Eleanor in that light, this woman who'd risked everything for him, who'd chosen him when the world told her she was a fool. And for the first time in his life, he felt like maybe he was worth something after all. "We should keep moving," he said. "They'll be after us by now. Let them come." Eleanor kicked her horse forward. "We've got a head start and a whole country to disappear into." They rode until mid-morning, until the town was far behind them and the mountains loomed large ahead. They stopped to rest the horses by a creek, and Jesse finally allowed himself to believe this was real. That he was free, that this woman beside him was his future instead of just a beautiful dream he'd wake from. "What do we do when we get to Colorado?" he asked. "We build something." Eleanor dipped her hands in the creek, splashed cold water on her face. "A cabin, a garden, a life. Nothing fancy, nothing the world will notice, just ours. I don't know how to build a cabin. Then we'll learn together." Jesse laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "You make it sound simple. Maybe it is. Maybe we've been making it complicated because we thought we had to." Eleanor stood up, brushed off her skirt. "But what if the answer is just this, you and me? Choosing each other every day, choosing to be better than what the world tried to make us." Jesse stood too. He looked at this woman. This impossible, magnificent woman who'd rewritten every assumption he'd ever made about what he deserved. And he made her a promise. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. You already are." "No, but I will be. I swear it." They mounted their horses and rode on. Behind them, Redemption Flats was waking to chaos, to the discovery of an empty cell and a missing prisoner, and the sheriff's daughter gone without a trace. Silas Kane would gather his men. Pauses would form. The hunt would begin, but ahead of them was Colorado, was freedom, was the possibility of peace. They rode for weeks, always moving, always careful. They changed their names. Jesse became James. Eleanor became Elle. They were just another young couple heading west, looking for land and opportunity like thousands of others. No one looked twice at them. When they finally reached the homestead, it was late autumn. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms, but it had a roof that didn't leak and windows that let in light. The land around it was wild and beautiful, full of aspen trees that turned gold in the fall and mountains that touched the sky. It was perfect. They spent that winter fixing up the cabin, learning how to survive on their own. Jesse proved surprisingly good at carpentry. Eleanor discovered she had a gift for preserving food and making medicines from wild plants. They worked side by side every day, and at night they lay together under blankets, talking until sleep claimed them. They never spoke about redemption flats, never wondered aloud whether Eleanor's father had forgiven her, or whether Silas Kane was still hunting them, or whether anyone even remembered their names. The past was a door they'd closed, and they had no intention of opening it again. But Eleanor thought about her father every day, wondered if he was all right, wondered if he hated her, wondered if he understood even a little why she'd made the choice she had. 3 years passed like water flowing over stones, constant and transforming. Elle and James built their life piece by piece. They had chickens and a milk cow. They planted a garden that actually produced vegetables. They made friends with the few neighbors scattered across the valley, people who asked no questions about the past and cared only about character in the present. And they were happy. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but genuinely, deeply happy in a way neither had thought possible. Then one day in spring, a letter arrived. There was no return address. Just Eleanor's name, her real name, written in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her father's. She opened it with shaking hands while Jesse watched from the doorway. The letter was short. Eleanor, I'm writing this because I need you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I was for a long time. Felt like you'd chosen a criminal over your own father. Felt like you'd betrayed everything I'd tried to teach you. But then Doc Patterson said something that changed my mind. He said you hadn't betrayed my teachings at all. You'd embodied them. You'd looked at a man everyone else had written off and seen something worth saving. You'd stood up for what you believed was right, even when it cost you everything. And that's exactly what I'd tried to teach you to do. I don't know if you and Jesse are still together. I don't know if you're happy or safe or even alive. But I needed you to know that I understand now. And I'm proud of you, not because you ran away, but because you had the courage to choose love over fear. Stay safe, daughter, and know that there's always a place for you here if you ever need it. The letter was signed simply, Pa. Eleanor read it 3 times before the tears came. Jesse crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, and she cried against his chest, great heaving sobs of relief and grief and love, all mixed together. Do you want to go back? Jesse asked quietly. To see him? Eleanor shook her head. Not yet, maybe someday, but not yet. This life we've built, it's too new, too fragile. I'm not ready to risk it. Jesse kissed the top of her head. Then we won't. We'll stay here. And we'll keep building. And that's what they did. Years passed. They had children, 2 daughters who grew up wild and free in the mountain valley, who learned their father's stories about the desert and their mother's stories about a town called Redemption Flats. They grew old together, Ella and James, their hands weathered by work, but still finding each other every night. Sometimes, on summer evenings, they'd sit on their porch and watch the sunset paint the sky crimson. And Eleanor would remember that first morning when they'd ridden away from everything they'd known, chasing nothing but hope and each other. Do you regret it? Jesse asked her once. Giving up everything for me? Eleanor looked at him. This man who'd spent his whole life believing he was worthless, who'd finally learned to see himself through her eyes. She looked at their daughters playing in the yard. She looked at the life they'd built from nothing but determination and love. Not for a single second, she said, and beneath the crimson horizon, as the sun dipped below the mountains and painted their world in shades of fire and gold, Jesse Crowfeather finally believed her. He finally believed he was worth saving. He finally believed he was home. Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.